John carefully observed his mother-in-law, whom he had admired for a long time. He pondered how to make the first step to express his feelings. In the end, he decided to wait for the right opportunity. Coincidentally, it was on this particular day that his wife urged him to visit his mother-in-law and ask if she needed anything. John didn't have to be persuaded for long, and he quickly left, slamming the door behind him. As he headed toward his mother-in-law's house, he pondered the best way to start the conversation. Should he be assertive? But that might lead to an unfavorable response. However, he figured she would be pleased since the young man had shown interest in her. Still, he was worried about the possible repercussions if she took offense or started yelling, or worse, if she reported it to her daughter. Once on the doorstep and ringing the doorbell, he hesitated. Suddenly, he heard quick footsteps approaching from the other side of the door. "Who's there?" warily asked his mother-in-law, who was always wary of burglars. John replied that it was his son-in-law, and a moment later the lock clicked and the door opened. "Well, come in," she said. When he looked at her, he was completely stunned. The sight of her sheer negligee made his throat dry. Her underwear was clearly visible, showing off her breasts. His son-in-law couldn't help but admire her gorgeous figure, and he wondered what she was like in bed. His own wife had long ago protested to him, tired to the point where he couldn't find the words. Why did I marry her? He only thought badly of her. She's mean, jealous, and doesn't look after herself. Eats too much and only sits around the TV. Unlike her, his mother-in-law had a slender figure and perfectly manicured nails, painted with red nail polish. Each nail resembled a piece of candy. Even though he didn't like sweets, he was drawn to her manicured fingers with shiny nails. It was almost an obsession. When his mother-in-law called him into the kitchen, he obediently followed her, furtively peering at her backside. He couldn't help but think how beautiful she was, and even longed to touch her. When his mother-in-law suddenly turned around, he thought she was reading his intolerable thoughts. It was as if she knew exactly what he was thinking. John looked confused. "Why did you come here?" she inquired, taking a seat at the table. Her negligee was half open at that moment. John thought about how a woman's legs were the last to age. First the face, and then everything else. His mother-in-law, however, seemed to defy that rule. Her appearance was flawless and would have been the envy of any young woman. Her skin was as fresh as a girl's, with a soft pink hue and peach fuzz on her cheekbones. John explained that he had come on his wife's errand to make sure everything was okay and to check on her. The mother-in-law smiled enigmatically, showing off her beautiful teeth. Her full lips, painted with bright lipstick, were tantalizing. John was confused, struggling to keep the conversation going. "Please have a seat." "I'll make some tea," she offered, gesturing to the table. "Thank you." John watched her graceful movements in the kitchen. Sandra moved easily and unhurriedly. Handing him the cup, Sandra leaned over. The neckline exposed firm, seductive breasts with no signs of aging. John was almost stunned by what he saw. He felt a rush of dizziness, but managed to pull himself together. He mentally scolded himself for acting like an immature guy, worried, like he hadn't seen enough of this in his life. Seen enough of this John in his life. He was unfaithful to his wife for quite some time. Not often, but regularly. He knows how to charm women. However, in his relationship with his mother-in-law, he was faced with a dilemma. He had no experience in this situation. He didn't know where to start. He didn't know how to proceed. Should he say, "I have feelings for you. I can't resist. Can I kiss you now?" Or should he refrain from direct words, but only subtle hints? John tried to determine the appropriate course of action, squirming in his seat. He couldn't even taste the tea, black or green, with or without sugar, cold or hot. John didn't know that Sandra was plagued by the same doubts. How to make the first move. She put on lipstick, especially for him when she saw her son-in-law from the window. She chose a bright red shade. She thought it would make it more obvious to him that she was a lonely woman craving male affection. However, she didn't want to hurt her daughter. She wore a negligee for him, as well as lacy lingerie from a famous brand bought at a discounted price. She put a lot of effort into it, but to no avail. She stares at him intently and blinks slowly, resembling a statue. "I'm fine. Thanks for asking," she said sincerely, sliding her foot over his leg. A shiver ran down John's spine. What graceful legs my mother-in-law has. They could do a can-can dance, it's true. Her ankles are slender, her calves strong, her knees rounded, and her skin is as smooth as a young girl's. Her mother-in-law grinned, realizing John was fascinated by her legs. Almost involuntarily, she shifted the position of her legs, exposing her thigh. Smooth and flawless, without a single dimple or wrinkle. John gritted his teeth, struggling to contain himself. He wanted to pounce on her and rip off those extra pieces of fabric. She'd be surprised. When would he finally get down to business? I could feel my mother-in-law's impatience growing. I was at a loss as to how to entice him. Maybe I should try getting naked or something. John took a deep breath, trying to keep his hands to himself. His heart was pounding frantically in his throat. His thoughts were a mess. What should he do? His whole being was screaming, demanding an answer. "I'm stuffy." "Open the window, son-in-law," she asked in a weak voice. John quickly got up from his chair and reached to open the window. Sandra came up behind him. He felt her warm breath and smelled her fragrant perfume. Without thinking, he abruptly turned around and pulled her to him, showering her with passionate kisses. Sandra pulled away at first, but soon gave in, responding with equal fervor. His wish to become a son-in-law had come true. Sandra proved to be a tough nut to crack, but she couldn't resist him. John felt joy. One less problem to worry about. He no longer had to look for new life partners. Sandra was always there for him, and being retired, she rarely left the house except for groceries. That was a stroke of luck. Sandra expressed the same opinion. If she got bored, she could turn to her son-in-law and ask him to help with repairs. And she would always find something that needed fixing. After all, he is not a fool and will quickly figure out what needs to be done. His wife remained unconcerned about everything. When she inquired how her mother was doing, she got an answer. Her mother is doing well. There is no need to worry. Indeed, the mother-in-law was currently in good health. She expressed a desire to change the wallpaper and asked me to find time to help her. John lied convincingly. His wife nodded in agreement. As for me, I certainly don't have time to help you. I have work to do. John pretended to reluctantly agree and rubbed his hands together. However, he decided that they would come up with another plan. For example, they could paint the floors or whitewash the ceiling, combining pleasure and practicality. It would make her happy and give him pleasure. Besides, it would be a double benefit for his mother-in-law. Renovations and my presence. Left alone, my mother-in-law began trying on lingerie. For an hour, she fidgeted in front of the mirror, scrutinizing herself. Satisfied with what she saw, she thought about what to wear to impress her son-in-law next time. Black stockings and a scarlet lingerie set. She decided, winking slyly at herself in the reflection. And high heels. That's where he'd go crazy. He's always staring at her feet. She planned to dance for him and light some candles. They'll have a wonderful time together. The most important thing is that they understand each other. With that thought, she lay on the bed, visualizing her son-in-law in every detail.